Hi guys, I'm Courtney.
And I'm Lisa.
And welcome to the next chapter in the Book of the Dead, brought to you by Darkcast Network, indie podcasts with a twist.
How do you think the world will end? Alien invasion? Nuclear disaster? Another, more deadly pandemic? I'm Jackie Moranty, and I'm the host of Cause of Death, 100 Seconds to Midnight. I talk about the things that could obliterate mankind. I call it pre-apocalyptic nonfiction. The doomsday clock was set at 100 seconds to midnight from January of 2020 to January of 2023. On January 24th, 2023, the Board of Atomic Scientists moved the hands of the clock even closer to midnight. Now, it's set at 90 seconds to midnight, the closest it's ever been. From nuclear disaster to environmental threats to food and water crises, find out how mankind is destroying itself 1 second at a time. If you haven't listened to my podcast, you should.
Hello. Welcome to the next chapter. Feels good to say that. So, as you guys know, I have been gone for a little bit. We've been gone for a little bit. As I said in one of our last chapters, I was dealing with a lot of burnout. I was really tired, just going through it. But I'm back, and with being back came a few changes. So really quickly before we jump in, uploads are going to be bi-weekly now instead of weekly, and that has to do with my new work schedule. I got a different job. I no longer work in retail. If you guys want to hear all the dirt on Target, maybe we'll do a fun little bonus Jonas episode. I'm just kidding. But I don't work in retail anymore. I work in an office, so my schedule changed, and that means that I had to change my upload schedule. So bi-weekly, and we're going to have different upload days. So instead of uploading on Sundays, we're going to be uploading on Wednesdays, because if I upload on a Wednesday, that means I have Thursday, which is my day off, Saturday afternoon, because I only work Saturday mornings, Sunday, and Tuesday morning to edit, record, and do all those things. So that's going to be the new schedule. I think it's going to work out a lot better. I'm going to be able to put out more involved episodes. I've been deep diving, and I'm really excited. I feel like it's going to be like a breath of fresh air. The quality is going to go up. Everything's going to be great. In addition to that, I did shut down the Patreon because I don't have time. And maybe I'll bring it back one day, but because I'm shutting it down, I'm going to bring you guys the Patreon episodes. So that's actually the episode you're going to hear today. It is an episode that I actually wanted to release here when I released it on Patreon, and I just never did. But it is a story from Texas that no one talks about. So you guys are going to hear it today. I'm really excited to be back. I'm really happy to be back, and I really can't wait to dive back in and bring you guys more cases that need to be heard. And without further ado, let's jump in to the murder of Sandra Bush. Hi guys, welcome to another bonus episode. And it's not a long one, but there's a pretty intense theory attached to it, and we're going to talk about it today.
Sounds like a plan.
So on today's bonus chapter, we're going to talk about Sandra Bush. And I will say that this is an unsolved case that many people don't know about. So I may put this up on the regular feed so her case gets more exposure. And if you guys have any objection to that, please let me know. Like, you guys pay for the bonus content. So it's up to you. If you don't want me to do that, I won't. But either way, it wouldn't be up right away. It would be up probably in a couple of weeks or a little bit longer than that anyway. But yeah, let me know if you have an objection. In addition to this case not being well known, it's also a case with not a lot of information. But I'm going to tell you everything that is known. So, Sandra Bush was a young 21-year-old woman living in Texas in 1983. She lived with her relatives in Fort Worth on the 3300 block of Cutter Street, and she was described as a lively, intelligent woman. I will say I can't determine if the relatives she lived with, Roy and Clarice McDonald, were her parents or her aunt and uncle. 2 different articles from the Fort Worth Star describe Clarice and Roy first as her mother and father, and then as her aunt and uncle who raised her. So I'm not sure which is correct, but either way, she lived with Clarice and Roy and her 2 brothers. Now, while she was in high school in 1980 at O.D. Wyatt High, she was an active member of the ROTC and the drama department. And her best friend, Gloria Davies, whom she grew up with, said she, quote, was so full of life and laughter. Gloria also told the Fort Worth Star that Sandra never spoke to strangers. Gloria said, quote, we were always going places and having fun together, but we were both extremely cautious, especially at night. Which, I love that. They were like all about making sure they were safe.
That's always a good thing. Safety first.
Gloria and Sandra had met when they were around 9 years old at church, where they sang in the choir, and they became fast and incredibly close friends. Like, it was immediate, like, bestie.
That's awesome.
Yeah, really, really cute. So all through high school, all through grade school, they were best friends. After she graduated high school with honors, she enrolled in Tarrant County Junior College in 1981, and in 1982, she transferred to Texas State University and decided on journalism as her major after previously not declaring one. Now, Sandra ended up not going back after completing 1 year of her studies. But in September of 1983, she got a job as a receptionist in a medical office run by Dr. Clinton Battle, who was an internal medicine specialist. Of Sandra, Dr. Battle said, quote, she was a very ambitious young lady. She was trying to earn money to return to school, according to the Fort Worth Star. At some point that year, she was also dating an unnamed man, according to the Criminal Journal, but they broke up sometime in the summer. And apparently this was a very amicable separation. They were friendly after the fact. I don't know how long they were dating, but they broke up. They just kind of went their separate ways, like it's not working out, and everything was fine.
Okay.
On November 17th, 1983, Sandra was at home when she got a phone call. She left her home after this phone call in a pink pantsuit, got in her tan 1979 Chevrolet Monte Carlo, and drove off. According to Clarice, Sandra had left a message on her answering machine saying, quote, hi, this is Sandra. Leave your name and number and I'll be right back. So she planned on coming back based on this message alone.
That's what it sounds like.
Because typically you wouldn't leave like an away message on your answering machine if you weren't coming back.
No, unless you were trying to throw someone off. Like if you expected a phone call from somebody that you didn't want to hear from.
Well, yeah, like if you were like screening your calls or something like that.
Right.
So, yeah, but...
No, I'm in full agreement, but
yeah, by all
I just
accounts,
had to put that out there.
No, it's true. It's true. But she was actually leaving the house, and it seemed like she did plan on coming right back. Again, very responsible, had a really good job, liked her job. So
there was no reason not to come back.
Exactly. However, she never made it back home.
Do we know what happened to her?
Well, based on what I've read, which unfortunately is not a lot, she was reported missing the same day she disappeared. It seems as if she was last seen at 6:35 p.m. at home, and when she didn't come back from wherever she was going, she was reported missing. And in this case, it looks like the police did not make Clarice and or Roy wait 24 hours.
Well, that's a plus.
So she was reported missing right away. According to friends of Sandra's, she would never just disappear or run off. As I said, she had a new job, she had just bought this car, And her friends said she was far too considerate to ever leave town without informing her friends and family. According to the Fort Worth Star, the very next day, her car was found parked outside of a bar on Refugio Street, which was several miles from her home. According to Clarice, this was not normal. Sandra never went to bars on the north side of town. If she was going to go to a bar, she would usually go to one on South Jennings Street, which was right near her home. She stayed very close to home, very close to her, like, inner orbit. If, you know, her world was home, she was not going very far from it, which I can relate to.
Well, you know, you feel safer in the area that you know.
Exactly. So she wasn't going ever to the other side of town. She was staying with where she knew, where she was comfortable. So according to police, when they searched the car, they found a blood-stained pillowcase in the trunk, and the interior of the vehicle looked like it had been wiped clean with this pillowcase. But Sandra was nowhere to be found.
Okay, she didn't disappear into thin air. Are you going to tell me where she went? What happened? Any clues? What'd they find? I can go on and on with the questions, but I'm trying to be patient.
See, the thing is they didn't find anything in the car because it had been wiped down. They could tell based on this pillowcase they weren't going to get any fingerprints, and they didn't. There were no fingerprints. And this was the 80s. It was 83 before fingerprint analysis was really a thing. But as you know, as we talked about in the Sherry Rasmussen case, it didn't come around until like 87. But still, they knew they weren't getting anything, and they couldn't, because someone had the wherewithal to wipe everything down.
Well, could they tell that the blood was, like, was it hers? Was it mixed with somebody else's?
Well, it's the same thing with the blood analysis. That wasn't really a thing either, but they knew that the blood was fresh-ish. You know, it wasn't weeks old or months old.
Okay, so they've got zero to go on is what you're telling me.
They have literally nothing. And it's not for lack of trying, just someone somewhere was smart enough to know that if the police didn't have anything to go on in terms of physical evidence, they were going to have a hell of a time figuring out what happened.
I understand that. However, just because you didn't have, you know, the social media or the cell phones or the blood analysis or DNA, the police did solve crimes prior to all of that.
Oh, absolutely. But they usually had something to go on. Eyewitness accounts, some sort of physical evidence. They had nothing. They had no idea why her car was in this part of town. It seems as if there were no witnesses as to why her car was there. Like, no one in the bar, I guess, came forward with any sort of information. According to her friends and her family, they were like, she would never go to this bar. It's on the other side of town. She had no reason to go to this bar. No one knew who was on the phone because there was no, she answered the phone. There was no message left or anything.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this. I'm sorry. I'm trying to wrap my head around this. People don't just disappear into thin air.
Well, she didn't disappear. They found her. So following the discovery of the car, police searched for clues with the help of Sandra's family, and they interviewed multiple suspects, but they never got any leads. Her friends and family held out hope for 7 weeks, hoping that Sandra would be found alive and well. On the evening of January 2nd, 1984, according to the Fort Worth Star, 2 men were hunting in a vacant field on Old Decatur Road north of Loop 820 when they discovered a body, partially clothed and hidden under pieces of wood. Due to the state of the remains, police were unsure of the body's identity, but they informed Clarice and Roy that they believed they had found Sandra. An autopsy showed that the woman was strangled with some type of cord, but the Tarrant County ME couldn't determine an identity for sure in that first week due to lack of dental records. The chief medical examiner, Nizam Pirwani, did believe that the decedent was Sandra due to the clothing, circumstantial evidence, and physical dimensions. In order to positively identify the body, Dr. Pirwani used a, quote, complicated technique that involved television cameras superimposing photographs of Sandra over photographs of the dead woman's skull. So basically, they took scaled images of Sandra and, lowered the opacity and put it over a photograph of the skull.
Okay.
To see if, the dimensions and the measurements of the skull matched the dimensions and measurements of Sandra's face and head.
Okay.
And that's how they were able to identify her.
Okay, but they have no idea of how this happened or who did this.
Exactly. All they know is that this is definitely Sandra, and they know that she was strangled. But they don't know anything else. And in fact, that method that was used to identify her had only been used 5 times prior since like 1979. So in 4 years, they'd only used this method 5 times. It was a very rare method to use, which is, as a side note, is quite interesting.
It is. It's to be able to do that and positively identify somebody is it's creative.
I'm curious as to know if they still do that now. I feel like probably not.
Probably not.
But I think that
with all the advancements in...
Yeah, but I feel like sometimes something as simple as that would get better results, especially with all the unidentified people in the world.
Well, I would think so, but again, I am not a medical doctor that can verify that that would be very, I'll say, accurate in that case. I don't know.
So they positively identified Sandra with this method, which gave some semblance of peace to her family, but that's it. The investigation stalled after her body was found. Police had nothing to go on. And it's been 40 years. Her case is still unsolved. Now, at the time, Crime Stoppers was offering a $1,000 reward in the hopes that someone would call saying they saw Sandra with her killer, and Gloria strongly believed that someone forced Sandra to drive her car to that bar because she never would have gone there otherwise, which I'm fully inclined to believe. I think someone, either she met up with someone or someone got into her car, like, I don't know, if like attempting to carjack her, possibly, and forced her to that side of town.
I was going to ask for what reason, but you have no information.
Exactly,
Unfortunately, there's no resolution to this. And so basically somebody got away with murder.
Well, what's interesting is that some believe that Sandra was the victim of a serial killer. A killer targeting Black women in Fort Worth. So while I was doing research, I came across an article from newsbreak.com. And this article kind of goes into this theory a little bit because there's not a lot of information. But it goes into this theory that there was a serial killer, or there is a serial killer in Fort Worth targeting Black women. And that's because between the years 1977 and 2003, the bodies of 11 Black women had been found in Fort Worth. They were all the victims of either strangulation, asphyxiation, or a brutal beating. 11
women have died in a horrific manner, and the police have not said that there is a serial killer out there?
No, because it's literally just, it's a theory that someone has that I think is definitely, probably accurate. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the victims, and they're as follows. On June 4th, 1977, the body of Ora Lee Prescott was found in Sycamore Park. Now, she had been strangled. On September 27th, 1980, after being reported missing a month prior, the body of Lorraine Larkin was found in the 4800 block of East Berry Street behind a vacant shopping center. Her cause of death was blunt force trauma. On December 11th, 1980, the body of Margaret Maxwell was found in a ravine near downtown Fort Worth. She had been raped, beaten, and strangled. There's actually DNA evidence in Margaret's case. She fought so hard she broke 5 fingernails, and there was skin found underneath them. On January 7th, 1982, the body of Joplin Jones was found on East 12th Street. Her cause of death was not listed. On January 17th, 1982, so 10 days later, 19-year-old Karen Annette Strong was found in a ravine on East Cypress Street. Her cause of death was also not listed. On March 12, 1982, the body of 17-year-old Angela Lionel Jones was found in a creek near East Richmond Avenue. She had been asphyxiated. Then we have Sandra. On October 19, 1984, the body of 29-year-old Marilyn Hartman was found in her home strangled with electrical cords and men's ties. On March 19th, 1992, a week after being reported missing, the body of 23-year-old Trina Lane was found in a creek near 3700 Cravens. She had been strangled. Her car was later found at a butcher shop at 4106 Mansfield Highway. On September 3rd, 1995, the body of Patricia Gail Jackson was found bound and strangled in a vacant lot at 500 Precinct Line Road. And on May 14th, 2003, the body of 23-year-old Cynthia Miles was found deceased inside her home at the Regency apartment complex. Now, her cause of death was also not released, but police believe she was killed in front of her two small children 2 days prior to the discovery, as they were in the apartment when her body was found.
Okay, so I'm sure my calculations are off, but there were 5 women that were strangled, 2 women that they did not release how they died.
3 that they did not release.
Sorry, 3. This is where I told you my math is probably off. But there were 5 that were strangled, 3 that were found, but how they died was not released. 1 was blunt force trauma, and none of those cases were solved.
No, none of them have been solved.
Okay, so either you have, 5, 6, 7 different people that have committed murder that are walking around scot-free. There's a serial killer that has committed these murders, and again, walking around scot-free. Now, you said that one of them had fought so hard for her life that she broke 5 fingernails?
Yeah.
And there was skin found underneath those.
Yeah.
At least 1 or 2 of them. I don't know if all 5. But
yeah, I don't know, but they have skin, like epithelials under.
Okay. And it is now 2023. We're heading towards the end of 2023. I know that advancements in science have been made that they could test that not only for DNA. They have the capability to at least solve her murder.
Absolutely. And I will say, of the 11, you could argue that 2 are possibly not the work of a serial killer, and that would be Margaret Maxwell, the one where they found the DNA, because she was raped. And that's the only, that for her, rape isn't, as far as I know, is not part of the MO of any of the other murders. So you could argue that is a separate person, as well as for Lorraine Larkin, because her cause of death was blunt force trauma. So you could argue, because the MO is different, even though Margaret was strangled, rape, again, doesn't seem to be part of the MO for the others. You could argue those 2 maybe are not the work of a serial killer, but the other 9?
Okay, but you're still saying, or from what I'm understanding, there are 11 people that have lost their life.
Yes.
Now, if there is the possibility of a serial killer, that would be the 9.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the blunt force trauma, and you have the rape and the strangulation. So there is a possibility, if it is a serial killer, that would be for the 9, say, and then you have someone, blunt force trauma, and then you have someone for the rape and strangulation. So that's 3 people minimum.
Yeah.
That are walking around scot-free.
Yes.
They may be living next to a potential victim.
Absolutely.
Or in a complex, an apartment complex where there's probably multiple potential victims. The one, at least, that had the skin cells underneath her fingernails, and they haven't done anything to solve that, when they have basically everything at their fingertips to put this, run testing and whatnot to solve, at a minimum,
Margaret's murder.
Her murder.
Yeah.
And nothing has been done.
No. And it's not like Fort Worth is this tiny town in the middle of nowhere. Fort Worth is like the 5th largest city in Texas. At least at minimum, it's like the 5th largest city in Texas. It's a big city. They have police. It's not like, you've got like 1 or 2 deputies. to take care of a whole town because it's so small, where they don't have the manpower. This is a population of like hundreds of thousands of people.
I understand all that. I'm still stuck on the fact that they have evidence to solve a murder, which, again, there is no statute of limitations on murder.
Exactly.
There's no statute of limitations. There's an unsolved murder that they could very easily at least have clues as to who did this.
Exactly. It's been 43 years. You're going to tell me that in 43 years you haven't taken a second look at Margaret's case? At minimum at Margaret's case, because there was evidence? Because you have the skin cells at a minimum, but you also could have fluids.
Right.
I mean, it's been 40 years. Maybe you don't have that particular piece of DNA anymore. But
however, again, there's no statute of limitations on murder. I also know that in some of the cases that we have covered and other podcasts that I've listened to, that there are investigators that look at cold cases.
Yeah, they have. Look at Elizabeth Salgado. Utah has a whole cold case coalition. Look at Sherry Rasmussen. They had a whole cold case unit.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I wasn't pointing to one particular case.
No, I know, but what I'm saying, those are examples alone of cold case, people looking at cold cases and solving them. I mean, yeah, you're not going to solve every cold case. It's just the way it is. It doesn't happen. But you're going to tell me, unfortunately, but you're going to tell me that you don't have someone looking into cold cases, especially when you have 11 women that were murdered between 1977 and 2003, over 30 years, or just shy of 30 years. You have 11 people murdered in very similar ways. They're all black women. So that's obviously a type. Like, come on, really?
Well, this is what I don't understand. This is where I can't wrap my head around it. And I think a lot of the listeners are probably scratching their head too, going, what are you talking about? Like, why isn't this solved already? There's a predator out there, at least one.
Yeah.
Possibly more than that. And yes, there are thousands of predators out there. I'm talking about this area committing horrific crimes like, I'm just talking about these.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Ones.
I understand.
I don't get it. Why is nobody looking into this? Especially with that one who they have at least some sort of a clue.
I'm going to call it racial bias.
I'm going to call it shenanigans.
That too. If anyone out there has any information about the murders of these women we mentioned here today, please contact Crime Stoppers at 817-469-8477, or you can call the Fort Worth Police Department at 817-392-4222. You can see why I might potentially put this on the main feed. If you have any objections because you paid for this episode, let me know. Because I think more people should know about this. There is one podcast, I believe it's called The Reporter's Notebook, that covered these murders, but that is the only place that I have seen coverage on this. So I might potentially do like a deep dive and do an expanded episode.
This is just it's look, there are 11 women, minimum of 11 women that have been murdered. Somebody out there knows something.
Absolutely.
Well, it's way past the time to call the police or call Crime Stoppers or something, do something to give justice to these women, to their families, to their friends. It's way past the time. So I'm pleading, if you know something, please make a phone call. Bring it to the attention of the police and the authorities so that this predator or these predators don't do it again.
Yeah. Hell, even if you don't know something, maybe you should call up the Fort Worth police. But, yeah. It's the murder of Sandra Bush. Lucy Leppy Part 1 is up. Give that a listen. for some more trauma. Part 2 will be up next Sunday, and in 2 weeks we have a pretty cool episode coming up. You guys get a little spoiler alert. We're going to be, or I am going to be, because Lisa's going to be at work, talking to a forensic psychologist. I'm actually really excited about that episode. We're going to be talking about the essentially the homicidal characteristics in men, because men statistically are meant to be more homicidal than women. Some warning signs, early intervention, ways to keep yourself safe. It's going to be very informative. I'm very much looking forward to it.
And it might be a two-parter. I'm thinking with all the questions and all of the conversation.
That's true.
It could very easily be a two-parter, which I think all the information that she has, I don't think can be covered.
Yeah, we'll see. It might be a two-parter, or it might just be like one of our longer episodes. It depends. I won't know, obviously, until we actually start recording. But yeah, you guys get a little sneak peek into that one, so that's cool. And then after that, I'm working on a really, really special case with the victim of the mother of a victim. So that's going to be a really special one. Means a lot that she trusts us to tell her son's story. But yeah, so as always, we love and appreciate you guys. If you guys are interested, check out WQEE Radio at 9 a.m. for my monthly true crime segment. I think you guys will enjoy it. I always have a lot of fun hanging out with Ryan O'Neill, so definitely check that out. And on Friday, we're going to hang out with Creepy Confidential. I'll put the links in the source notes below. You know I will. And that will be on Friday. The live show is on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern. And check out Cause of Death 100 Seconds to Midnight, which was our promo for this episode, one of our Darkcast Network friends. And we will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this chapter of the Book of the Dead. As always, check the source notes for resources used in this chapter. And don't forget that you could follow us on Instagram at Book of the Dead Pod, or shoot us an email with a case suggestion at bookofthedeadpod@gmail.com.
We just hope that you have a wonderful rest of your week. We will be back next week with another chapter of the Book of the Dead.
And always remember to stay curious, stay safe, and stay vigilant. Bye, guys.
Bye.